An empty desk is the most persistent operational frustration in education. For decades, administrators have categorized a perpetually absent student as a behavioral problem, a failure of compliance. This assumption triggers a standardized sequence, sending morning letters, assigning detention hours, and mandatory parent meetings. Attendance are the downstream result of an overwhelmed nervous system keeping a student out of the building. By taking the standard student information system spreadsheet and running it through a clinical lens, educators can map out clear physiological signatures of distress. These routine attendance and health clinic logs are holding highly predictable data signatures, pointing directly to specific manifestations of anxiety. To solve chronic absenteeism, school leaders need to read this data the way a clinician would, starting with these 3 specific high-signal patterns. The first pattern is anticipatory anxiety. It's the condition administrators routinely mistake for laziness or a student wanting to extend their weekend. In reality, anticipatory anxiety is a physiological escalation. The student's body is accumulating severe stress regarding an impending event. This chart tracks a student's nervous system activation over a month. The hidden stress cycle actually begins on Friday evening, slowly building momentum. By Sunday night, that anticipation overwhelms the student, becoming entirely physical, resulting in acute muscle tension and an inability to sleep. Before the alarm clock even rings on Monday morning, the student's body has already locked into a full fight-or-flight state. In the administrative database, this cycle leaves a very specific footprint, a disproportionate volume of absences occurring exclusively on Mondays. The administration sees a student willfully skipping the start of the week. The data shows a nervous system that has maxed out its capacity to cope. Issuing a Monday morning reprimand for this absence is counterproductive. The threat of punishment actively adds stress to the exact anticipatory cycle causing the problem. A spike in Monday absences is the climax of a 48-hour anxiety curve. To fix it, interventions have to address the student's emotional regulation over the weekend, long before they miss first period. Beyond full-day absences, the data also tracks partial-day disruptions, specifically the midday exit from the classroom. This brings us to pattern 2, somatic anxiety. Schools frequently mislabel these students as frequent flyers or malingerers who invent excuses to avoid difficult work. When a student lacks the vocabulary to articulate their emotional distress, the body takes over. Somatic anxiety is the physical expression of unnameable dread. The recurring stomach aches, migraines, and dizziness are entirely genuine. The student is experiencing a localized physiological reaction, not fabricating a lie. This daily bell schedule maps exactly how you spot the trend, by cross-referencing classroom periods against health clinic logs. The visual signature is highly predictable. Trips to the nurse cluster around the precise same period or exact time of day every single day. This tight clustering means the physical reaction is time-bound. A specific repeating environmental stressor is triggering the response just before the symptom appears. Predictable midday nurse visits are biological alarm bells. They dictate an immediate clinical investigation into what happens during that specific time block, rather than a punitive response for skipping class. The third and most highly localized pattern of nervous system dysregulation is situational avoidance. In this scenario, a student successfully attends the vast majority of their daily schedule without issue, but consistently generates truancy flags for one specific period. This grid maps out a multi-class attendance matrix. The signature here is extreme attendance variance, perfect green records for almost the entire day, broken by a solid block of red absences localized to a single class. This isolated data point demands an investigation into the room itself. The variables usually fall into specific categories, like a difficult teacher dynamic or an ongoing peer conflict. Another major trigger is sensory load. An unpredictable, loud, or brightly lit classroom environment can rapidly dysregulate specific students. Alternatively, the room might contain a performance trigger, an acute, paralyzing fear of giving presentations, group work, or being called on publicly. The surrounding green blocks prove the student possesses the general capacity to attend school. The isolated red block proves they are executing a self-preservation strategy against a localized threat. Single-class avoidance is a symptom of an environmental mismatch. Getting the student back in the room requires adjusting the specific classroom dynamic rather than issuing detentions for the avoidance. Monday absence spikes, predictable midday nurse clusters, and single-class variants. These 3 administrative patterns are high-fidelity signals of an overwhelmed nervous system. They are not compliance violations. Relying on the traditional disciplinary model here ignores a basic physiological limit. It is biologically impossible to discipline a student's nervous system out of an active fight-or-flight state. The operational response has to adapt. Identifying these data patterns must become the official prerequisite for a clinical conversation, replacing detention with clinical triage. This shift creates a direct path to intervention. For the student with somatic pain, the nurse's office becomes a point of teletherapy access, where a therapist can de-escalate the nervous system in real time. For the student missing Mondays, a dedicated clinical team works with the family on Sunday night regulation strategies before the alarm ever goes off. When the response is matched to the biological data signature, the results follow. Schools using this clinical pipeline report that 89% of students show improved attendance, with 92% experiencing a reduction in overall anxiety. Executing this strategy requires zero new data collection from educational leaders. It simply requires a change in how they read the logs they already maintain. By transforming attendance spreadsheets from ledgers of punishment into diagnostic tools, schools can stop penalizing symptoms and start treating the root causes of chronic absenteeism.